Imagine if Ursula the Sea Witch was actually a mermaid. Picture Elsa as the main villain of Frozen, with ice shards for hair and a heart as cold as her powers. What if Scar had his own army of baboons, or if Mickey Mouse looked like a terrifying demon? These aren't fan theories or internet jokes. These are real concepts that Disney artists actually drew, developed, and pitched to executives. Some of them got shockingly close to making it into the final films. Today, we're talking about Disney's vault of rejected designs, cut concepts, and alternate villains that would have completely changed the movies we know and love. The Little Mermaid, Ursula's shocking original design. Ursula, the sea witch with her tentacles, dramatic makeup, and incredible voice. She's terrifying, she's fabulous, and she's not what Disney originally planned. In the earliest concepts for The Little Mermaid, Ursula wasn't an octopus at all. The original design showed her as a mermaid, specifically as Ariel's aunt. She was going to be thin, conventionally attractive, and look almost exactly like Ariel, but with a more sinister expression. Think about that for a second. Instead of the gloriously theatrical octopus woman we got, Ursula would have been just another pretty mermaid with a bad attitude. The artists even explored making her a rockfish or a manta ray at different points in development. One concept showed her as a Joan Crawford-inspired sea creature with fins instead of tentacles. Another version had her living in a sunken ship graveyard, surrounded by the skeletal remains of sailors. But here's where it gets really weird. One abandoned storyboard sequence showed Ursula actually succeeding in her plan. In this version, she would transform into a giant sea monster for the final battle. We're talking kaiju level huge. She would have multiple heads, dragon-like features, and would be powerful enough to create whirlpools that could sink entire fleets. The animators ultimately landed on the octopus design partly because of Divine, the famous drag performer. The lead animator saw Divine in movies and said, "That's Ursula." They combined Divine's dramatic presence with octopus tentacles, and movie history was made. But man, can you imagine how different the movie would be if Ursula was just Ariel's evil aunt? It would be like an underwater soap opera instead of an epic battle between a mermaid and a sea witch. Frozen, when Elsa was the villain. This one's going to blow your mind because Frozen is such a massive part of modern Disney culture. But the movie we got is completely different from what Disney almost made. In early versions of Frozen, Elsa wasn't the misunderstood princess with ice powers. She was the straight-up villain, the main villain, the only villain. The original Elsa design is absolutely chilling, and not in a good way. Her hair wasn't the elegant platinum blonde braid. Instead, she had short, spiky hair made of actual ice crystals. Her eyes in these early designs were cold and calculating. No warmth, no emotion, just pure ice. Some concept art showed her with makeup that looked like frost patterns on her face, making her appear even more inhuman. The plot was completely different too. In this version, Anna wasn't her sister. Anna was just a regular girl from a village that Elsa had frozen. The story was going to be about Anna teaming up with Kristoff to defeat the evil Snow Queen and save her village. There was even a sequence planned where Elsa would create an army of snow monsters, not cute little marshmallows, but genuinely terrifying ice creatures with sharp teeth and claws. One storyboard showed these monsters attacking Anna and Kristoff in a forest, with Elsa watching from her ice palace and laughing. The turning point came when the songwriters presented Let It Go. The directors heard it and realized they couldn't make this character a villain. The song was too empowering, too emotional. So they rebuilt the entire movie around making Elsa a sympathetic character. Imagine if they hadn't. We'd have a completely different movie, probably darker, definitely scarier, and we'd have missed out on one of the most powerful sister relationships in Disney history. The Lion King, Scar's baboon army. The Lion King is pretty dark already, right? Scar murders his brother, tries to kill his nephew, and manipulates an entire pride. But Disney almost made it even darker with some truly bizarre design choices. In early concepts, Scar wasn't going to have the hyenas as his allies. Instead, he was going to command an army of baboons. The concept art for these baboons is absolutely nightmare fuel. They were designed to look aggressive, with pronounced fangs, blood-red eyes, and matted fur. Some designs showed them carrying weapons, actual weapons, like sharpened sticks and rocks. One particularly disturbing storyboard sequence showed these baboons living in a dark cave system under Pride Rock. Scar would visit them, and they'd be shown eating. The baboon army was going to be Scar's personal military force. In the planned climactic battle, hundreds of these creatures would swarm Pride Rock, fighting against the lionesses. It was supposed to be way more violent and chaotic than the hyena battle we got. Disney executives ultimately decided this was too complex and too dark for a children's movie. Plus, the baboon designs were testing poorly with kids. One executive reportedly said the baboons looked more like monsters than animals. In this version, Scar's design was much more physically intimidating. He was going to be bigger than Mufasa, covered in scars from previous battles, with a torn ear and a blinded eye. The story was going to be more like a Western showdown between two rival lions. Some concept art even showed Scar with a completely different color scheme, darker browns and blacks instead of the black mane we know. He looked less like a schemer and more like a warrior. The brother angle was added later to make the betrayal more personal and painful, and honestly, it worked. But imagine how different the movie would feel if Scar was just some random aggressive lion instead of family. Aladdin, the Jafar that never was. Everyone knows Jafar as the tall, thin villain in red and black with that iconic cobra staff, but original Jafar designs are wildly different and way weirder. In the earliest concepts, Jafar wasn't human at all. He was going to be a humanoid genie, basically a more evil, corporeal version of the genie. The designs showed him with bluish skin, pointed ears, and an ethereal smoke-like lower body instead of legs. One concept had Jafar as a traveling merchant who was secretly a powerful sorcerer. In this design, he was short, round, and friendly-looking, the complete opposite of what we got. There was a phase in development where artists explored making Jafar look more insect-like to match his creepy, scheming personality. These designs are disturbing. Picture Jafar with multiple arms, like a praying mantis, elongated fingers that look like spider legs, and eyes that were too large and had multiple pupils. Some sketches showed him with antenna-like features on his head and a long, segmented neck. It was going to be way more action-heavy and violent. The genie in the lamp ending was actually a last-minute change that the directors made during production. They realized it was more poetic and ironic for Jafar to become the thing he desired most, only to discover it was a prison. Beauty and the Beast. The Beast's many faces. The Beast's design is iconic, that perfect blend of different animals that makes him scary but also sympathetic. But getting to that design was a nightmare for Disney animators. Early Beast concepts are all over the place. Some are too cute, some are absolutely horrifying, and some are just plain weird. One early design made the Beast look like a giant baboon. He walked on all fours, had a bright red bottom, like real baboons, and had enormous fangs. The animators quickly realized this looked ridiculous and not at all romantic. Another concept made him look like an actual devil, red skin, horns, cloven hooves, and a pointed tail. This was rejected because, well, Disney probably didn't want their romantic hero to literally look like Satan. But the weirdest Beast design has to be the insect version. Similar to the Jafar concept, there was a phase where an artist pitched making the Beast a mixture of human and insect features. The sketches show a creature with compound eyes, mandibles instead of a mouth, and segmented arms. The reasoning was that insects are often seen as beastly, and it would make the transformation to human even more dramatic. Thankfully, someone with common sense vetoed this immediately. There was also a version where the Beast remained on all fours throughout the entire movie. He would have been more animal than human, living in a den rather than a castle, and unable to use furniture or eat at a table. Belle would have had to teach him to walk upright as part of his transformation. The final Beast design combined features from a buffalo, the head and mane, a gorilla, the body and stance, a bear, the strength and size, a wolf, the legs and tail, and a boar, the tusks. It took years to get right, and they went through hundreds of sketches. There was also a cut character called Clarice, who was going to be an additional servant in the castle. She was transformed into a music box that could only play sad songs. In this storyline, she and Lumiere were in love before the curse, but now she's trapped as an object that reminds everyone of what they've lost. Way too depressing for a Disney movie. Mickey Mouse, the original design you've never seen. Let's go way back to where Disney started, with Mickey Mouse. But the Mickey Mouse in Walt Disney's first sketches looks nothing like the cheerful character we know. Walt's original mouse character was going to be named Mortimer Mouse. And the design? Imagine a rat, a mean-looking rat with a long snout, small beady eyes, and an aggressive posture. Early Mortimer sketches show a character that looks genuinely unpleasant. His smile looks more like a sneer, his eyes are too close together, and his body proportions are all wrong, too thin, too angular, too rat-like. Walt's wife Lillian famously told him that Mortimer sounded too pompous and suggested Mickey instead. But she also convinced Walt to soften the design, making the eyes bigger and friendlier, the snout shorter, and the overall appearance more appealing. But even in Mickey's early cartoons, his design was still pretty weird. In Steamboat Willie, Mickey is actually quite mean. He hurts animals for musical purposes and shows little empathy. The design reflected this with sharper features and more aggressive movements. Over the years, Mickey's design has been continuously modified to make him cuter and more appealing. His eyes got bigger, his ears got rounder and more flexible, and his personality got friendlier. The Mickey of today looks almost nothing like the Mickey of 1928. There's also a series of rejected Mickey designs from the 1930s, where artists experimented with giving him a nose, weird, visible teeth, weirder, and even fingers with actual fingernails. Nightmare fuel. Tangled. Rapunzel's rejected looks. Tangled went through one of the longest development periods of any Disney movie, over 10 years. During that time, Rapunzel went through hundreds of different designs. One early concept made Rapunzel look much younger, like a child. The story was going to focus on her growing up in the tower, showing years passing. She would start as a little girl and end as a teenager. Her design would change throughout the movie as she aged. Another version made her look much older and more traditionally, fairy tale. She had a very long face, a prominent nose, and a more mature appearance. This Rapunzel looked like she was in her late 20s or early 30s. But the weirdest rejected design was when they tried to make Tangled in 2D animation instead of 3D. The 2D Rapunzel designs are shockingly different. She looks like she stepped out of a completely different movie. Very angular, very 90s Disney style, and not nearly as appealing as the final 3D design. There was also a version where Rapunzel's hair had magical properties, even beyond what we saw in the final film. The tower design also went through crazy changes. One concept had it covered in thorns and looking genuinely evil, like something out of a horror movie. Another had it as a lighthouse. One weird version had it as a giant tree with the room carved inside the trunk. Moana, the original villain. Moana is interesting because it doesn't have a traditional Disney villain. Taka is more of a force of nature than a character, but that wasn't always the plan. In early versions of Moana, there was going to be a human villain, a rival chief from another island who wanted to stop Moana's journey because he believed the ocean was too dangerous. The design for this character showed an intimidating warrior covered in traditional Polynesian tattoos, carrying a large club and leading a crew of aggressive sailors. He would have been a physical threat, chasing Moana across the ocean. But test audiences didn't like having a human villain in a story that was supposed to be about Polynesian culture and mythology. It felt wrong to make Pacific Islanders fight each other when the movie was supposed to be a celebration of that culture. There was also a rejected design for Maui that made him much thinner and more conventionally heroic looking. The animators eventually decided to make him larger and more realistic to actual Polynesian body types. It was a good choice that made the character more authentic and relatable. The ocean itself went through wild design changes. Early concepts showed it as much more aggressive and scary, with giant waves that had faces and teeth. One version had the ocean appearing as a massive water serpent when it got angry. They toned it down to the playful, curious ocean we got in the final film, which was much better for the story's tone. Pocahontas. Controversial cuts. Pocahontas is already a controversial movie due to its historical inaccuracies, but some of the cut designs and concepts were even more problematic. Early Governor Ratcliffe designs made him even more of a caricature, hugely overweight to the point of being unable to move without help, with exaggerated features that bordered on offensive stereotypes of British people. One controversial cut was a villain named Kokum, who was originally designed very differently. In early versions, he was going to be much more aggressive and violent, serving as a human antagonist who wanted to kill John Smith. The design made him look genuinely scary. War paint, aggressive posture, carrying multiple weapons. Disney softened his design and his role after consultants pointed out this was reinforcing negative stereotypes. There was also a cut subplot involving Pocahontas having actual magical powers. She could talk to trees, make plants grow, and even control animals. The designs for these scenes showed her glowing with mystical energy, surrounded by spirits. This was removed to make the story feel more grounded and less appropriative of Native American spiritual beliefs. Why these designs were rejected? There are usually three main reasons Disney rejects designs. Too scary for children. Disney has to walk a fine line. Villains need to be threatening, but not traumatizing. The baboon army, insect features, and some of the more horrific beast designs cross that line. Too complicated to animate. Some designs that look cool in concept art are nightmares to actually animate. Doesn't fit the story. Sometimes a design is cool but doesn't work for the character's role. Evil Elsa looked awesome, but couldn't work once they decided to make her sympathetic. Human villain in Moana looked great, but sent the wrong message. The ones that got away. Some rejected designs are honestly better than what we got. Even evil Elsa could have worked in a different, darker movie. But Disney is in the business of making movies that work for everyone. Kids, parents, international audiences, different cultures. The rejected designs we've looked at today show the creative process in action. For every iconic character we love, there are dozens of weird, wild, and sometimes wonderful designs that didn't make the cut. Next time you watch a Disney movie, take a moment to appreciate the final character design. Behind every beloved character are countless hours of work, hundreds of rejected sketches, and probably at least a few nightmare-inducing concepts that would have scarred children for life. And honestly, some of these rejected designs are so bizarre, so weird, so completely wrong that they make the final movies even more impressive. Disney didn't just stumble into these perfect designs. They fought for them, tested them, and refined them through years of development. So the next time someone tells you animation is easy, or that Disney movies are just for kids, remind them about the baboon army, the ice-haired evil queen, the insect villain concepts, and all the other weird, wild ideas that Disney almost approved. Because creating something timeless means being willing to try something terrible first. And who knows, maybe in some alternate universe, there's a version of The Little Mermaid where Ursula is a pretty mermaid aunt, and kids grow up thinking that is normal. In that universe, they're probably making videos about the weird octopus woman design that almost got approved. The next time Disney announces a new movie, remember, whatever characters they show in the trailer went through dozens or hundreds of rejected designs to get there. Somewhere in Disney's archives are concept art folders labeled too scary, too weird, and probably what were we thinking? And honestly, I'd pay good money to see what else is in those folders. Because if these are the rejected designs they're willing to talk about, imagine what they're keeping secret.